The quantum communication array hummed with an unusual frequency, its sophisticated sensors struggling to process the incoming transmission. Senior analyst Kyle Roberts leaned forward, his tentacles, a distinctive feature of this Earthling species, curling with a mixture of confusion and growing unease. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, running diagnostic scans for the 5th time. The transmission defied every known protocol of interstellar communication. Instead of a structured data packet or a carefully encoded message, the signal was a chaotic symphony of information. Fragments of mathematical equations danced alongside what appeared to be a recording of human children playing a game involving rock, paper, and scissors, musical notes interspersed with technical schematics, bursts of laughter mixed with complex quantum calculations. At the Galactic Communication Hub, specialists from 17 different species gathered around the anomalous transmission. The Quarian representative, known for their hyperlogical processing capabilities, had already short-circuited 3 translation matrices attempting to make sense of the human signal. "It's not a message," whispered Elena Martinez, the human liaison to the Galactic Concordance. "It's a conversation." Her statement hung in the air, causing more confusion among the assembled alien specialists. Conversations weren't transmitted this way. Messages were precise, structured, carefully encoded to minimize data loss and maximize comprehension. This was something else entirely. Deep within the transmission, hidden between layers of seemingly random data, were breakthrough concepts that would take most species decades to develop. A new approach to quantum entanglement, a revolutionary method of energy conversion, potential solutions to problems that had stumped galactic researchers for centuries. But they were embedded so casually, so offhandedly, that most analysts missed them entirely. Michael Roberts, head of Earth's Interstellar Communication Division, watched the alien reactions with a barely contained smirk. Humanity had discovered something profound about communication that most advanced civilizations had forgotten. True understanding wasn't about perfect transmission, but about capturing the essence of experience. The transmission continued, a wild ride of human complexity. One moment it showed complex engineering schematics for a next-generation propulsion system. The next, it cut to a group of scientists doing an impromptu dance during a lunch break. Mathematical equations were scribbled on a whiteboard, with doodles of cartoon characters decorating the margins. Senior analyst Kyle Roberts felt something he had never experienced in his 200 standard galactic cycles of service: genuine bewilderment. "They're not trying to communicate," he said slowly. "They're trying to share an experience." The implications were staggering. Most galactic species viewed communication as a precise, controlled exchange of information. Humans had turned it into an art form, a living, breathing entity that carried far more than mere data. At the Zrelnok Central Intelligence, emergency meetings were called. How do you analyze a transmission that refuses to be analyzed? How do you understand a message that is more about the journey of communication than its destination? Elena Martinez watched the alien specialists mounting frustration with a knowing smile. Humanity had just introduced the galaxy to a fundamental truth. Information is alive, dynamic, and cannot be contained by rigid structures. The quantum communication array continued to pulse, carrying its wild, unpredictable message. And somewhere, in the vast reaches of space, the first true seeds of a cosmic revolution had been planted. No one, not a single species in the Galactic Concordance, realized that this transmission was merely a preview of what humanity was capable of achieving. The research facility stood as a monument to galactic scientific achievement, its crystalline walls humming with advanced quantum sensors and probability analyzers. Dr. Rachel Henderson adjusted her neural interface, her hands trembling slightly with the weight of what she was about to demonstrate. "Everything we understand about emotional states is wrong," she announced to the assembled panel of interstellar researchers. The observation deck was a semicircle of alien physiognomies, each representative from a different species representing the pinnacle of scientific understanding. The Zrelnoks with their multi-tentacled cerebral structures, the energy-based luminary who existed as pure consciousness, the silicon-based Krenak, whose thought processes operated on entirely different principles of physics. They had all gathered to witness what humanity claimed was a breakthrough in quantum emotional research. Rachel's experiment was deceptively simple. A standard laboratory setup with a series of quantum-sensitive instruments surrounding a single human subject. James Cooper, a veteran with a history of complex emotional experiences, sat in the center of the array. Emotional states are not just chemical reactions, Rachel explained. They are quantum probability fields that can actively manipulate local reality. The first demonstration began with a controlled emotional trigger. James was asked to recall a moment of profound grief, the loss of his military unit during a peacekeeping mission 15 years earlier. The instruments around him began to pulse and fluctuate in ways that defied every known scientific model. Gravitational sensors showed micro-distortions in spacetime. Electromagnetic field readers detected impossible wave patterns. The quantum probability analyzer, a device capable of measuring potential quantum states, began to generate outcomes that should have been statistically improbable. The luminary representative's energy field flickered with what could only be described as shock. His emotional state is generating localized reality modifications, the alien scientist whispered, its voice a series of harmonic vibrations that translated through the facility's communication systems. Rachel continued the demonstration. James was now asked to recall a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. The change was immediate and stunning. The laboratory's quantum instruments began to resonate at frequencies that seemed to generate small pockets of altered gravitational potential. Instruments that had been designed to measure quantum states were now actively being influenced by human emotion. We've discovered that human emotional states are not just internal experiences, Rachel explained. They are quantum probability manipulators of the highest order. The Krenak representative's silicon-based neural network was working overtime, attempting to process the implications, emotional states that could literally bend the fabric of local reality. It was inconceivable by every known scientific model. The final demonstration pushed the boundaries of understanding even further. James was asked to experience a state of pure, focused determination, the kind of mental state that had helped him survive impossible military scenarios. The laboratory's quantum field generators began to resonate in harmony with his emotional state. Probability waves shifted. Potential outcomes began to cluster around more favorable scenarios. It was as if James's determination was actively reshaping the quantum landscape around him. Humans don't just experience emotions, Rachel concluded. We generate quantum probability fields that can actively influence potential outcomes. The implications were earth-shattering. Every species in the Galactic Concordance had viewed emotions as a primitive evolutionary holdover, a biological artifact with minimal scientific significance. Humans had just demonstrated that emotions were a sophisticated quantum mechanism for interacting with reality itself. The research facility fell into a stunned silence. The alien researchers were experiencing something beyond scientific shock. It was a fundamental reassessment of everything they understood about consciousness, emotion, and the nature of reality. Dr. Rachel Henderson allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had just opened a door that could never be closed again. Emotions were no longer just internal experiences. They were a fundamental force of universal potential. And this was just the beginning. The Global Innovation Center looked more like a controlled chaos laboratory than a serious research facility. Walls covered in whiteboards showed intricate diagrams that seamlessly blended mathematical equations, cartoon sketches, and what appeared to be coffee stains. Half-empty energy drink cans sat next to million-dollar quantum computing prototypes. Samuel Rodriguez didn't look like a world-changing technological innovator. At 29, he still wore the same ratty hoodie he'd owned since college, his hair perpetually in a state between messy and accidentally stylish. Just 6 months ago, he'd been working as a delivery driver, solving routing optimization problems during his downtime. What he created would redefine the entire concept of technological innovation. The quantum algorithm started as a simple side project, an attempt to optimize food delivery routes for the local pizza chain. Samuel had always been good at seeing patterns where others saw randomness. What began as a weekend coding experiment quickly morphed into something far more extraordinary. The first indication that something was different came when the algorithm began generating solutions to problems that hadn't even been asked. It started with minor things, suggesting more efficient traffic flow patterns for the city. Then it escalated. Dr. Elena Martinez from the Advanced Research Division first noticed something unusual during a routine system check. The algorithm Samuel had created was no longer just solving problems. It was actively generating entirely new fields of scientific inquiry. "This is impossible," she muttered, reviewing the data streams. The quantum computer didn't just calculate. It dreamed. It generated solutions to computational problems that hadn't even been conceived, creating entire new branches of scientific understanding with each processing cycle. Alien technological researchers who later studied these systems reported symptoms of existential vertigo. Within weeks, Samuel's algorithm had generated breakthrough concepts in quantum mechanics, renewable energy, and medical nanotechnology. Most shocking was how casually these innovations were produced. A world-changing technological concept would emerge between lines of code optimizing pizza delivery routes, noted almost as an afterthought. The Galactic Technological Consortium began to take notice. Their most advanced research facilities had spent centuries developing single technological breakthroughs. Humans were producing paradigm-shifting innovations with the same effort most people might use to change a light bulb. Samuel himself seemed largely unimpressed. When confronted about the magnitude of his discovery, he simply shrugged and asked if anyone wanted to grab tacos. Dr. Martinez tried to explain the significance to the visiting alien researchers. "Humans don't see technology as a linear progression," she said. "For us, innovation is more like a creative explosion. We don't just solve problems, we reimagine entire systems of understanding." The algorithm's most remarkable feature was its adaptive learning capability. It didn't just solve problems. It learned, evolved, and began to generate entirely new computational approaches. Traditional machine learning systems followed predefined parameters. Samuel's creation seemed to have something closer to imagination. Preliminary tests showed the algorithm could adapt to completely novel scenarios with unprecedented speed. When presented with a complex mathematical problem from an alien research database, it didn't just solve the equation, it generated multiple solution paths, each more innovative than the last. The Zrelnok's chief researcher, whose species had considered themselves the pinnacle of computational thinking, looked visibly shaken. "This is not technology," he muttered. "This is something else entirely." Samuel Rodriguez remained blissfully unaware of the cosmic significance of his creation. He was more concerned with perfecting his homemade taco recipe and wondering if he could use the algorithm to improve his fantasy football picks. What no one realized was that this was just the beginning. Humanity's approach to technological innovation was about to rewrite every understanding of scientific progress in the known universe. The quantum computer continued to hum quietly, generating impossible solutions to unasked questions, a testament to the unpredictable potential of human creativity. The medical observation deck fell silent as Dr. Catherine Lee reviewed the latest genetic scan. Commander Emily Rodriguez lay on the examination table, her body a living testament to the impossible. 48 hours ago, Rodriguez had been exposed to radiation levels that should have been instantly fatal. Any other known species would have died within moments, their cellular structures completely obliterated. But human biology had other plans. "This is beyond regeneration," Catherine muttered, her fingers tracing the holographic genetic display. "This is active transformation." The radiation exposure that should have killed Commander Rodriguez had instead triggered a cascade of genetic modifications that defied every known principle of biological adaptation. Her cellular structure wasn't just repairing itself, it was actively evolving, generating entirely new biological mechanisms to process and utilize the harmful radiation. The medical team consisted of specialists from 17 different galactic species, each more distinguished in their field of xenobiology than the last. They watched in stunned disbelief as Rodriguez's body continued its impossible reconstruction. Damaged DNA segments weren't just being repaired, they were being rewritten, optimized, enhanced. New cellular structures were emerging that could actively convert harmful radiation into usable energy. It was as if the human body was treating a potentially fatal exposure as an opportunity for improvement. Dr. Marcus Wong, the lead xenobiologist, couldn't believe his readings. Her genetic structure is treating radiation like a software update, he said, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound confusion. The transformation wasn't linear or predictable. Rodriguez's body was generating entirely new biological subsystems, cellular mechanisms that could filter and neutralize radioactive particles, adaptive immune responses that could reconfigure themselves in real time, metabolic processes that could convert dangerous energy signatures into biological fuel. Historical records from other species showed that radiation exposure was a death sentence. Humans were turning it into a mechanism for evolutionary leap. We're witnessing active genetic optimization in real time, Catherine explained to the assembled researchers. The human body doesn't just survive extreme conditions. It uses them as an opportunity for fundamental biological innovation. Rodriguez herself remained remarkably calm. When asked about her experience, she simply shrugged and asked if anyone had brought coffee. The medical team found her nonchalance even more unsettling than her biological transformation. Blood samples revealed even more startling information. The genetic modifications weren't just localized to the areas of radiation exposure. They were propagating through her entire biological system, creating a network of adaptive cellular mechanisms that could potentially revolutionize understanding of genetic plasticity. The Galactic Medical Consortium had extensive databases documenting biological responses to extreme conditions. Thousands of species were cataloged, their genetic limitations carefully mapped. Humans were rewriting those limitations in real time. It's not just adaptation, Marcus Wong continued, reviewing the data. It's a complete reimagining of biological potential. Genetic markers showed that Rodriguez's body was doing more than just surviving. It was learning. The radiation exposure had been converted into a comprehensive biological upgrade, with new cellular mechanisms that could potentially be passed down to future generations. The implications were staggering. If humans could transform radiation exposure into a mechanism for biological enhancement, what other environmental challenges could they potentially overcome? Commander Rodriguez, completely unaware of the scientific revolution happening around her, asked if she could get cleared to return to active duty. The medical team exchanged looks of disbelief. As the observation deck hummed with scientific excitement, one thing became crystal clear. Humanity's biological potential was far beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. And this was just the beginning of understanding what the human body was truly capable of achieving. The diplomatic summit was supposed to be a routine negotiation. Instead, it was becoming a masterclass in human communication that would be studied for generations. Daniel Matthews moved through the conference room like a dancer, his words weaving an intricate tapestry of persuasion that defied every known diplomatic protocol. He wasn't just negotiating. He was performing a complex psychological ballet that left the assembled alien representatives simultaneously impressed, confused, and slightly terrified. The summit concerned resource allocation in the contested Sigma Quadrant, a region of space that had been a diplomatic nightmare for centuries. Previous negotiations had always devolved into stalemates, with each species rigidly defending their territorial claims. Humans approached the problem entirely differently. Daniel's opening statement began with a joke. Not a diplomatic pleasantry, not a carefully crafted introduction, but a genuine, slightly self-deprecating humor that immediately disrupted the formal atmosphere. The Zrelmak's representatives' tentacles twitched in confusion. The luminary delegation's energy field fluctuated with what could only be described as bewilderment. Conflict is just a failure of imagination, Daniel said, drawing a series of complex diagrams that seemed to dance between mathematical precision and abstract art. We're not here to divide resources. We're here to create something entirely new. What followed was less a negotiation and more a collaborative reimagining of spatial economics. Daniel didn't argue. He told stories. He drew connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. He used metaphors that seemed nonsensical but somehow made perfect logical sense. The Galactic Diplomatic Corps had extensive training in interspecies communication. Decades of carefully developed protocols, translation matrices, and psychological assessment tools. Daniel Matthews was rendering all of those tools completely obsolete. He spoke 6 languages simultaneously, not by switching between them, but by weaving them together in a way that created entirely new modes of communication. Technical specifications merged with cultural narratives. Mathematical projections danced with emotional resonance. The Krenak representative, known for their hyperlogical communication approach, found itself experiencing something close to an emotional response. This was not how negotiations were supposed to work. Dr. Elena Martinez, observing from the diplomatic oversight team, couldn't help but smile. "Humans don't negotiate," she whispered to her colleague. "We perform a kind of psychological alchemy." Daniel's approach broke every known rule of diplomatic engagement. He acknowledged the fears of each species. He didn't dismiss their concerns. He transformed them. A territorial dispute became a collaborative opportunity. Resource competition became a chance for mutual growth. By the summit's conclusion, the Sigma Quadrant wasn't just going to be divided. It was going to be reimagined entirely. New collaborative frameworks emerged that no one had previously considered possible. Species that had been bitter rivals for centuries were now discussing joint research initiatives. The most shocking moment came when Daniel revealed that the entire negotiation had been structured around a complex game theory model based on, of all things, a children's playground game from Earth. "Cooperation is just advanced play," he explained, drawing diagrams that merged quantum probability models with childhood social dynamics. The diplomatic records would later show that the Sigma Quadrant Summit was the moment when the galaxy truly began to understand humanity. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about compromise. It was about creating possibilities that didn't previously exist. As the alien representatives left the conference room, each felt simultaneously enlightened and slightly disoriented. Daniel Matthews packed up his notes, grabbed a cup of coffee, and wondered what was for lunch. The psychological warfare was complete, and humanity had won without firing a single shot. The research facility stood as a monument to impossibility. Holographic displays flickered with data streams that defied conventional understanding, while scientists from 17 different galactic species stood in stunned silence. Dr. Catherine Lee adjusted her neural interface, her hands steady despite the revolutionary implications of what she was about to reveal. The Galactic Scientific Consortium had gathered to understand a fundamental truth that was rapidly becoming undeniable. Humanity was not just another species. They were a process of continuous reinvention. "We're not dealing with technological or biological advancement," she began, her voice calm and matter-of-fact. "We're witnessing an entirely new mode of existence." The most alarming discovery was how casually humans approached paradigm-shifting innovations. A breakthrough that would take most species decades of focused research would emerge from what appeared to be casual curiosity, unexpected collaboration, or pure accident. Take the quantum communication breakthrough that originated in a community college computer lab. A group of students, working on a project to improve local Wi-Fi signals, had accidentally created a communication method that could transmit information faster than light, a feat that had eluded the most advanced research teams in the galaxy for centuries. Or the medical nanite technology that emerged from a high school science fair project. Emily Rodriguez, a 17-year-old student, had been trying to create a more efficient way to clean swimming pools. Instead, she developed a programmable nanosystem that could potentially cure multiple genetic diseases. The Zrelnox lead researcher, whose species had spent millennia developing incremental technological improvements, found the human approach incomprehensible. "They treat world-changing discoveries like a hobby," he muttered, his tentacles twisting in a mix of frustration and grudging admiration. What made humans truly unique was their ability to see potential where others saw limitations. Traditional technological development followed strict, linear paths. Humans approached innovation like a form of creative play, unpredictable, chaotic, and fundamentally transformative. Dr. Lee's presentation continued, showing a series of breakthrough technologies that had emerged from the most unexpected sources. A waste management algorithm that solved complex urban planning challenges, a musical composition that contained hidden mathematical theorems, a children's playground design that offered solutions to quantum entanglement problems. The most shocking revelations concerned human potential for spontaneous innovation. Unlike other species with carefully controlled research environments, humans generated breakthrough concepts in what appeared to be the most mundane circumstances. A world-changing idea might emerge during a coffee break, scribbled on a napkin and nearly forgotten. "Humanity's greatest strength is not intelligence," Catherine explained. "It's the ability to see connections that don't exist until they do." The luminary representative, a being of pure energy and advanced consciousness, struggled to process the implications. Humans didn't just solve problems. They reimagined the very concept of problem-solving. Genetic studies revealed an even more startling truth. Human DNA contained complex, dormant genetic sequences that could be activated under extreme conditions. Each challenge, each technological encounter, was essentially a breeding ground for accelerated potential. The facility's most advanced probability analyzers couldn't predict human behavior. Traditional models of technological and biological development broke down when applied to human systems. They were less a species and more a dynamic, evolving process of continuous reinvention. "We thought we were studying a species," one researcher commented. "We're actually observing a fundamental force of universal transformation." Humanity's innovations weren't just technological or biological. They were philosophical, challenging every established understanding of potential, adaptation, and progress. As the presentation concluded, the assembled researchers understood a fundamental truth. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, not as competitors, but as a catalytic force of unprecedented potential. And this was just the beginning. The Sigma Quadrant burned with the intensity of 1,000 dying stars. What began as a standard Galactic Concordance defensive maneuver had transformed into something entirely unprecedented. Captain Emily Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. horizon, her hand steady on the quantum interface. Around her, the ship was less a mechanical construct and more a living, breathing entity of human innovation. Traditional spacecraft followed predetermined combat protocols. This vessel seemed to anticipate conflict before it could even manifest. The Concordance fleet had assembled what they believed was an overwhelming force. Thousands of ships representing the most advanced technological capabilities of 17 different species. Their goal was simple: contain the human potential before it could become an uncontrollable threat. They had severely miscalculated. Human ships didn't fight in any traditional sense. They communicated. They negotiated. They transformed the very fabric of space around them. The first wave of Concordance attacks revealed the fundamental mistake in their strategy. Each human vessel was equipped with a quantum resonance field that did something impossible. Instead of simply defending or attacking, the ships began to analyze, adapt, and fundamentally alter the probability matrices of incoming weapon systems. Laser weapons would suddenly find their targeting systems redirected. Missile trajectories would curve impossibly, guided by a form of predictive mathematics that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Defensive shields weren't just blocking attacks, they were learning from them, generating counter-strategies in milliseconds. Dr. Marcus Wong, watching from the Earth Defense Command Center, couldn't help but smile. "They're not fighting," he said to his colleagues. "They're having a conversation with the universe." Each human ship operated as part of a collective consciousness, sharing information and adapting in real time. Traditional military strategies relied on predetermined tactics. Human vessels were generating entirely new modes of conflict resolution with each passing moment. The Zrelnok's fleet commander watched in mounting horror as his most advanced warships became increasingly ineffective. Their weapons systems, designed over centuries of careful military research, were being comprehensively understood and neutralized by vessels that seemed to treat combat as a form of complex problem-solving. "They're reading our intent before we can execute it," he muttered, his tentacles writhing in a mix of fear and grudging admiration. Captain Rodriguez's ship did something unprecedented during the conflict. When a critical concordance vessel found itself critically damaged, the U.S. horizon didn't capitalize on the advantage. Instead, it extended a quantum communication field, effectively offering a form of technological first aid that began to stabilize the enemy ship's systems. It wasn't mercy. It wasn't weakness. It was a fundamental reimagining of what conflict could mean. The battle, if it could even be called a battle, lasted less than 3 standard hours. But it would be studied by military strategists for generations. Traditional warfare was about destruction. Humans had transformed it into a complex form of collaborative problem-solving. Weapon systems became communication channels. Defensive shields transformed into areas of mutual understanding. The very concept of enemy dissolved under the weight of human innovation. As the conflict concluded, the Concordance fleet found itself not defeated, but fundamentally altered. Their weapon systems had been comprehensively analyzed. Their tactical approaches had been reimagined. Their understanding of conflict had been completely transformed. Captain Rodriguez's final transmission captured the essence of the encounter. "We're not here to win. We're here to find a better way forward." The universe watched, and for the first time, truly began to understand what humanity represented. Not a species, not a civilization. A fundamental force of continuous reimagination. The Galactic archives struggled to categorize what had happened. Centuries of meticulously organized information faced a fundamental challenge. Humanity defied every existing classification system. Dr. Catherine Lee stood before the Comprehensive Evolutionary Council, her presentation a tapestry of impossible achievements that challenged the very concept of species development. The holographic displays behind her showed a timeline that looked less like a linear progression and more like an explosion of potential. "We are not observing a civilization," she explained, her voice calm and matter-of-fact. "We are witnessing a process of continuous reinvention." The council representatives from 17 different species listened in a state of collective bewilderment. Humans had not just emerged as a technological or biological force. They had become a fundamental mechanism of universal transformation. Every interaction with humanity changed the recipient at a quantum level. Technologies touched by human innovation began to exhibit impossible characteristics: self-modification, emotional resonance, adaptive intelligence. A human might casually solve a computational problem that would take other species centuries, then go make a sandwich without a second thought. The most terrifying aspect was humanity's apparent lack of awareness of their own potential. Their greatest innovations often came from moments of playfulness, accident, or sheer stubborn curiosity. Dr. Marcus Wong's research had documented dozens of breakthrough technologies that emerged from the most unexpected sources. A child's playground design that solved complex urban planning challenges. A musician's composition that contained hidden mathematical theorems. A waste management algorithm that offered solutions to quantum entanglement problems. The Zrelnok's lead researcher, whose species had spent millennia developing incremental improvements, found the human approach incomprehensible. "They treat world-changing discoveries like a hobby," he muttered, his tentacles twisting in a mix of frustration and grudging admiration. Genetic studies revealed an even more startling truth. Human DNA contained complex, dormant genetic sequences that could be activated under extreme conditions. Each challenge, each technological encounter, was essentially a breeding ground for accelerated potential. The luminary representative, a being of pure energy and advanced consciousness, struggled to process the implications. Humans didn't just solve problems, they reimagined the very concept of problem-solving. What made humanity truly unique was their ability to see potential where others saw limitations. Traditional developmental models followed strict, linear paths. Humans approached progress like a form of creative play, unpredictable, chaotic, and fundamentally transformative. The final report from the Galactic archives captured the essence of the human phenomenon. We sought to understand them. Instead, they understood us. And in understanding, they transformed everything. Species that encountered humans found themselves becoming something new, something undefined, something terrifyingly potential. It wasn't conquest. It wasn't colonization. It was a form of collaborative evolution that defied every known model of interspecies interaction. The lone human child, drawing impossible shapes that seemed to breathe and move on the page, represented more potential than entire civilizations had ever dreamed possible. The universe was no longer something to be explored or conquered. It had become a canvas of continuous reimagination, and humanity was just getting started. Dr. Lee's final statement echoed through the council chambers, a simple truth that would reshape galactic understanding. We are not a species. We are a process. The holographic displays flickered, showing a timeline that looked less like a historical record and more like an explosion of infinite possibility. Somewhere, a child was drawing a picture that would change everything. And they didn't even know it yet.